Introduction to warehouse safety. Introduction to the module. Safety in warehouse management can protect the health and lives of employees. By taking the right precautions, companies can help prevent illness and injury and become a safe and healthy workplace. This module will introduce you to the safety concerns related to warehousing. Topics to be covered in this module: the importance of warehouse safety training, hazards faced by warehousing workers, causes of warehouse injuries, risk assessment, legal responsibilities in ensuring warehouse safety. The importance of warehouse safety training. Warehouses, often full of moving machinery carrying heavy loads, are inherently one of the most dangerous places to work. Warehouse working environments have plenty of potential hazards, such as moving forklifts, lifting loaded pallets, slips and falls, and more. To reduce the level of risk, adequate warehouse safety training is essential. Safety training is an ongoing process. Skills always need upgrading and reassessing. Warehouse accidents can affect the worker who has had the accident, other workers of the company, company reputation, level of productivity, and the owner. Therefore, supervisors and workers must be keenly aware of their surroundings and follow appropriate warehouse safety procedures. Hazards faced by warehousing workers. Traffic patterns, fast pace, constant motion, and a myriad of various materials being handled and stored lead to exposure to many hazards. Some of the most common hazards faced by warehouse workers are as follows: unsafe forklifts and docks, improper stacking or storage of materials, failure to wear proper personal protective equipment, conveyor hazards, hazardous substances, materials, and chemicals, improper fueling and charging batteries, poor ergonomic design, slips and falls, potential fires, crush injuries and machinery accidents, repetitive stress injuries. Causes of warehouse injuries. According to the annual statistics of 2020 provided by the Health and Safety Executive, 29 fatal injuries to workers were due to falls from a height. Being struck by a moving vehicle accounted for 20 fatal injuries, representing just under 20% of the total number of deaths over the year. The main cause of injuries in warehousing are manual handling, falls from height, slip or trip, hit by moving, falling object, hit something fixed or stationary, harmful substances, fires and explosions, fixed postures, repetitive motions. Risk assessment. A risk assessment is a process of identifying the hazards currently exist or may appear in the workplace. A risk assessment defines which workplace hazards are likely to cause harm to employees and visitors. By law, every employer must conduct risk assessments on the work their employees do. Under the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, an employer must do is identify what could cause injury or illness in the business, hazards. Decide how likely it is that someone could be harmed and how seriously, the risk. Take action to eliminate the hazard, or if this isn't possible, control the risk. Risk assessments process. Risk assessments should be simple to conduct, following a process that includes looking for and listing the risks to health and safety, deciding who might be harmed and how, checking that protective measures are effective, evaluating the risks arising from the hazards and deciding whether existing precautions are adequate, recording the findings, reviewing the assessment from time to time and revising it when required, particularly if the building is refurbished, moved, or when there is a change in staffing. Legal responsibilities in ensuring warehouse safety. Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. The most recognizable piece of legislation in place to protect UK employees is known as the Health and Safety at Work Act, HSWA, 1974. The Act covers occupational health and safety throughout the UK. It states that employers must provide a safe place of work and that the health and safety of their employees are always protected. To some extent, it also places some responsibility with the employees themselves to monitor their employer and make sure they are complying with all the guidelines set out in HSWA and other relevant protocols. The Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999. This set of regulations recognizes the duty that employers have to understand and prepare for risks to their employees during required work activities. As a result of these rules, employers must have appropriate procedures in place to ensure the well-being and safety of all those on the premises. They also need to make sure that emergency arrangements are in place, with full information circulated to all employees. Employees are also expected to work in conjunction with their employer and alert them to any concerns they have with the environment or safety in general. The Provision and Use of Work Equipment Regulations 1998. These regulations, often abbreviated to PUWER, place duties on people and companies who own, operate or have control over work equipment. It also places responsibilities on businesses and organizations whose employees use work equipment, whether owned by them or not. PUWER requires that equipment provided for use at work is suitable for the intended use, safe for use, maintained in a safe condition and inspected to ensure it is correctly installed and does not subsequently deteriorate. Used only by people who have received adequate information, instruction, and training. Accompanied by suitable health and safety measures. Used in accordance with specific requirements for mobile work equipment and power presses. The Manual Handling Operations Regulations 1992. The regulations apply to manual handling activities involving the transporting or supporting of loads, including lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, carrying, or moving loads. The regulations require employers to avoid the need for hazardous manual handling, so far as is reasonably practicable. Assess the risk of injury from any hazardous manual handling that can't be avoided. Reduce the risk of injury from hazardous manual handling, so far as is reasonably practicable. Reasonably practicable means balancing the level of risk against the measures needed to control the real risk in terms of money, time or trouble. The Lifting Operations and Lifting Equipment Regulations 1998. These regulations, often abbreviated as LOLER, place duties on people and companies who own, operate or have control over lifting equipment. All lifting operations involving lifting equipment must be properly planned by a competent person, appropriately supervised and carried out in a safe manner. LOLER also requires that all equipment used for lifting is fit for purpose, appropriate for the task, suitably marked, and, in many cases, subject to statutory periodic thorough examination. Records must be kept of all thorough examinations, and any defects found must be reported to both the person responsible for the equipment and the relevant enforcing authority. The Work at Height Regulations 2005. The purpose of the Work at Height Regulations 2005 is to prevent death and injury caused by a fall from height. If you are an employer, or you control work at height, the regulations apply to you. Employers and those in control of any work at height activity must make sure work is properly planned, supervised and carried out by competent people. This includes using the right type of equipment for working at height. Low-risk, relatively straightforward tasks will require less effort when it comes to planning. The Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations Act 2002. The occupational use of nanomaterials is regulated under the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health, COSHH. COSHH is the law that requires employers to control substances that are hazardous to health and includes nanomaterials. You can prevent or reduce workers' exposure to hazardous substances by finding out what the health hazards are, deciding how to prevent harm to health, providing control measures to reduce harm to health, making sure they are used, keeping all control measures in good working order, providing information, instruction, and training for employees and others, providing monitoring and health surveillance in appropriate cases, planning for emergencies. Summary. In this module, you have learnt: safety training is an ongoing process. Skills always need upgrading and reassessing. Manual handling, falls from height, slip or trip are some of the most common causes of warehouse injuries. A risk assessment is a process of identifying the hazards currently exist or may appear in the workplace. By law, every employer must conduct risk assessments on the work their employees do. Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 states that employers must provide a safe place of work and that the health and safety of their employees are always protected.